The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We would like to hand over to now counsel for Noon Chi if he wishes to put a few more questions. And can counsel please advise the chamber as to how he already shared this time with counsels for Mr. Kyusampon?
Yes, Mr. President, we agreed that I would be continuing for another half hour, and the last 25 to 30 minutes would be the time for the Kyusampon team. Mr. Witness, although you have testified to this particular point before, but just to be clear, is it correct that you have not seen yourself the actual killing of these 20 people?
Response: No, I didn't see this. These people were taken away only to be received by other people, and then I would be allowed to return home.
Did you in any way experience in the days after you left these people signs of possible killings? For instance, a smell of dead bodies, or maybe the sound of bulldozers digging graves, something to that effect?
Response: I don't know.
When you say you don't know, this means that you didn't see or didn't hear anything like that, or just to be sure?
Response: I took them there, but I didn't see the pits prepared for them or any other things that you mentioned.
And also, Mr. Witness, to be clear about the number of the groups. Before the break, there was confusion whether it were in fact 10 or 20 people that you brought. I have been going through your earlier statement to the investigating judges, and there you were speaking about 10 people. Today you spoke about 20 people. My question, just to be sure, how many people did you bring to this particular site? 10, 20, or maybe more?
Response: This morning I already told the court once that I took about 20 people, not just 10 people. These 20 people include a few children as well.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Witness. I'm just reading for you a passage from your statement to the OCIJ on ERN number 00274647, page 6, first paragraph. you said, and I quote you literally, when people got together, they were divided into smaller groups of 10 people. But today you're saying it was a group of 20 people.
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on, and Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would object to this question. Counsel is, again, misleading the court and the witness. The passage he just read from talked about what happened when they got to the execution site, that they were divided up into groups of 10 at the execution site. By leaving out the prior part of the sentence, he's attempting to mislead the witness in the court and suggesting that the witness previously said he only brought 10 people up to the execution site. The witness statement does not say that.
Mr. President, the only thing I can say in answer, and then I will move on to the next question, is that the prosecution can use the word execution site as many times as it wants, but from this witness we haven't heard any testimony that the people were in fact executed. But nevertheless, I will move on. Mr. Witness, just to speak some more about the people that you refer to as Svai Tram. Would you be able to explain one more time what you meant when you were using these terms to describe that particular group?
Response. Svai Tran refers to families who were regarded as the village militia.
Village militia, is that something else in your recollection than Lon Nol soldiers or Lon Nol officials?
Response. Svai Tran or Lon Nol soldiers were the terms that were used interchangeably, but the soldiers were those who engaged in fighting in the battlefields, when the militia would be someone who would stand guard or protect the village at the village.
But did I understand you correctly when you said earlier that the group of Lon Nol soldiers was a different group, and that you had nothing to do with that, and that they were relocated to another area?
Response. Lon Nol soldiers and the militia were grouped as one. They were the same people.
But earlier, Mr. Witness, you were speaking about a separate group of Lon Nol soldiers. Did I understand you correctly?
Response. My understanding is that soldiers and militias or Svaitran are the same. The difference is that the soldiers would go to fight in the battlefields when the militia or the Svaitran group would just be in the village.
Very well. Then could you maybe explain again how the village chief knew that these around 20 people were Svaitran? Did these people also write a biography?
Response. Biographies were already written before the village chief would know their identity. For me, I don't know about this.
So you don't know whether these specific 20 specific Svaitran had in fact written their biographies?
Response. No, I don't know whether these 20 people already had written their biographies. I was tasked with taking them to a new village, and I took them.
Do you know where they were from? Which town?
Response. I knew they were from Kampong Chnang.
And how did you know?
Response. The village chief told me.
And did the village chief tell you how he knew? Response. He told me to bring this group of 20 people to another new village because now in this area there was not enough food. That's what he told me. Do you remember if any of these 20 people were living in the 150 houses in the village after 17 April 1975?
Response. They were living in the houses that were far from mine. They lived in the village, but not in the central part of the village. They were living somewhere near the far from the central area.
Do you remember seeing them before you took them as a group to this location? Do you remember seeing them walking around in the village, for instance?
Response. No, I didn't. I never saw them.
Just to be sure, you didn't know any of those 20 people personally. That is correct, right?
Response. I had not known them, and if I see any of them today, I would still recognize one of their faces.
Have you ever been to Kampong Chnam in the years afterwards?
Response. Yes.
Have you ever seen any of these 20 people in Kampong Chnam?
Response. No.
Have you heard anybody say that one of these people was living in Kampong Chnam?
Response. No, I haven't heard anyone talk about this.
Now let me get back, Mr. Witness, to your statement, and I would like to read a passage from your statement. Page 6, ERN 00274647, that is in document D125/68, you say the following. At that time, there was an order to kill approximately 100 families in early rainy season in 1975. This order was immediately implemented. The soon-to-be-killed people were told to bring all belonging properties and travel to the execution site by own means, such as by carts or on foot. The determined destinations were several, all of which was located near the execution site. When people got together, they were divided into smaller groups of 10 people. Then they were told that they would be brought to see Ankar. However, they had to be blindfolded and their hands had to be tied behind their back. Now, is this something that was told to you by others? Have you actually witnessed this? Could you explain this passage in the light of your early testimony that you haven't seen anything when it comes to executions?
Response. I didn't see them being taken away. I just heard people talked about it.
But who told you about approximately 100 families to be killed in early rainy season in 1975?
Response. The village chief, no one else other than him.
But how did he know?
Response. He knew it because he was the village chief.
Did he say that he saw it? Did he say that he was involved? Did he do the actual killing?
Response. I didn't see him killing anyone.
But then how did he tell you how he knew?
Response. He told me that, you see, all people were gone, and that to him these people could have been killed already because they never seen coming back to the village.
But you just testified that they left to be relocated in another village.
The President, witness, could you please hold on, and Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
I had two objections, Mr. President. Again, questioning is getting repetitive. Second, counsel is again mischaracterizing the testimony of this witness. This witness described what he called trickery, where these people were told they were being moved to a new village, but in fact were not. So I think if counsel has asked these same questions a number of times now, but if he is going to engage in repetitive questioning, he shouldn't misstate the testimony of the witness.
I'm just asking a question to this witness, and is the prosecutor now giving evidence saying that they were in fact not being relocated but executed? He's now making an argument. I'm just trying to see if there's a discrepancy between what this witness has been saying and testifying that the group was relocated in another village, or that they might have been killed. Trying to find out what the truth is, Mr. President.
The President, the objection by the co-prosecutor is sustained. The questions are repetitive. Counsel, you are now instructed to move on to a new question.
Very well, Mr. President. I would like to read you, Mr. Witness, another quote from your statement to the OCIJ. That would be on the same page, same ERN number, page 6. You say the following: when people to be killed arrived at the execution site, executioners were already waiting there. Pits were already dug beforehand. Executioners told people to sit at the pits and listen to the announcement of Ankar. One of the executioners counted 1, 2, 3, and they began to kill. One killer killed only one person. Mr. Witness, could you explain this statement in the light of your earlier testimony that you haven't seen any executions?
Response. One person could kill another person only if the other person was tied up. Otherwise, it was impossible.
I don't understand this answer, Mr. Witness. I read you a passage from your statement in which it says that you've seen with your own eyes people being executed. Today, in your testimony, you're saying that you never saw such a thing. Now, which of the two is the case?
Response. I think I apologize for not being able to respond to this.
You think you cannot answer this and you apologize. That's not an answer. My question is simple. Which of the two is true? Your testimony today or the statement that you made in front of the investigating judges?
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. An international court prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Sorry to be on my feet again, Mr. President. If counsel is going to put a question, he should be more specific. The passage he just read, first of all, it doesn't indicate it was all based on eyewitness information. The witnesses described some of this earlier. If counsel wants to put a specific part of this statement to the witness to seek his clarification, I have no objection. But I think his question is vague when he reads when he reads a statement that has 6 different assertions in it, and then asks a very broad question. So I would ask counsel to be very specific in regards to this particular statement.
I'm lost, Mr. President, and in your hands. I'm just reading a passage from a statement in which this witness seems to say that he saw with his own eyes an execution. Today we are hearing that he didn't see it himself. I'm just trying to find out which two of the statements is correct. What else could I do?
Mr. President, let me help counsel a little bit. For example, the last sentence in the statement he just read says one of the executioners counted 1, 2, 3. The witness has explained how he knew that. So that is why it's if counsel wishes to put specific parts of this statement to the witness, I have no problem with that. But I think it's improper to put this entire group of statements together as one, as if they are one assertion.
It says one of the executioners counted 1, 2, 3. I only have 2 more minutes. Let me rephrase, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, I just read you a passage about pits being dug beforehand and an executioner counting 1, 2, 3, and the killing began. Now, have you seen that yourself with your own eyes, or have you heard that maybe from somebody else? Or are you making it up, Mr. Witness?
I was nearby and I heard the counting of 1, 2, 3. Of course, I heard the counting, but I did not know whether they killed the people there as I walked away. But I personally heard the counting of 1, 2, 3.
But was it an executioner who was counting 1, 2, 3, or was it just somebody who was counting 1, 2, 3?
course, it was the executioner who counted, and nobody else.
Now, how would you know that if you haven't seen anything, Mr. Witness?
I heard the counting, but I could not see through the forest.
Maybe it was somebody giving an instruction that people should walk, 1, 2, 3. Could that be the case too? Mr. Witness, I will finish my question. Isn't this complete testimony, a figment of your imagination? You've never seen any executions. You were not ever involved in any executions. You have no idea about executions happening in your village. Isn't it true, Mr. Witness? It is all a figment of your imagination.
Of course, it is not a fragment of my imagination. I did hear the counting of 1, 2, 3, although I could not verify with you whether it is a counting of the commencement of killing the people or it's the counting for people to march, because I was about 30 meters away when I heard the counting.
Let me put it differently, Mr. Witness. I'm putting to you that there were no executions. That you weren't a witness to any of those executions in the weeks after 17 April 75.
I am not clear on your question.
For the very last time, Mr. Witness, I am putting it to you that you were not witness to any executions in the weeks after 17 April 75. Is that true?
President, witness, please wait the prosecution. You may proceed.
Mr. President, if counsel is simply asking the witness to confirm whether he personally saw the killings, I have no problem with that. If he's making an argument here about whether the witness's testimony supports the fact that executions occurred, then I would have a rather large problem with his putting it to the witness that his testimony does not establish that there were executions. But if his question is simply intended to confirm that the witness did personally not see the killings, I have no objection.
That we have established, Mr. President. And my final question is, isn't it true, Mr. Witness, there weren't in fact any executions in the weeks after 17 April 75?
President, the objection by the prosecutor is sustained. Witness, you are instructed not to respond to this question, and I think the time is run out for you, counsel.
Sadly enough, Mr. President, I will finish my questions.
President, the floor is now given to Kiel's and Park's defense. You have 24 minutes to conclude.
Thank you for that very precise time definition, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, I have a few follow-up questions to put to you. It won't take long. I think 24 minutes will be just what I need. Just now you answered a question from my learned colleague Mr. Koppe, who was asking you how you knew where the 300 families came from who you found one day in your village. And you answered that your father had talked with these people, and they said they came from Kampong Chnang. So let me ask you, what about Phnom Penh? If your father said that certain people came from Kampong Chnang, how did you know that other people came from Phnom Penh? Who told you that?
Those who came from Kampong Chnang stayed under my house, and for those who came from Phnom Penh, they stayed at other people's houses or under the trees.
Could you answer my question, which was, how did you know that these other people came from Phnom Penh?
Those who came from Phnom Penh, they came from a different direction. The one came from Kampong Chnang came from the east, and those who came from Phnom Penh, they went through Kampong Speu. So the directions that they arrived from were different. And there were many of them, and there were a mixture of these two groups of people in the village.
You will forgive me if I don't fully understand your answer, because at the start of this afternoon's questioning, at the first question put by my learned colleague Mr. Koppe, you said that when you saw the 300 families setting up in your village, they were already all there, living there in the village. And now, what I'm asking you is, how did you know that some of the families were from Phnom Penh? And you told me that they came from Phnom Penh because they took a different route. How did you know that some of the families who were installed in your village had come from Phnom Penh?
I heard that some people who came from Phnom Penh settled in that village, and the village chief also said that in our village people came from Phnom Penh, and also some came from Kampong Chnang.
Are you talking about your village where you had your house, or are you talking to us about a different village, Mr. Witness?
Of course, I talked about my village because I only knew what happened in my village, and I did not know what happened in other villages.
So, what you're telling me is that the idea that some of the families among the 300 had come from Phnom Penh was given to you by the village chief. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Did the village chief tell you this before the 300 families did their biographies or after they had written their biographies?
The biographies had already been written. For that reason, he knew from where they came from, either Phnom Penh or Kampong Chhnang.
Combien de temps
How much time went by between when the 300 families came to your village and the time when some of the 70 families that you were responsible for started to be evacuated? In other words, between the arrival of the 300 families and the episode when you were asked to accompany 10 or 20 people to a new village.
I only took 20 people, and I did not take any other people from those groups.
Oui, oui, je suis d'accord.
I don't dispute that, but my question is about the time that went by between the arrival of the 300 families and the episode where you accompanied 20 people. How much time elapsed between those two events?
The period between these two events was about 3 days. Some people had been brought or taken out during these 3 days, but I was the one who took that group probably 3 days after those people arrived.
Vous avez
You told us that you saw 300 families coming into the village, and this morning you said that there were 5 people roughly per family, so roughly 1,500 people came to install themselves in your village. These must have included children. Indeed, you talked to us about children, but these people had to write their biographies, as you told us. Let's imagine that 2/3 of them wrote biographies, so that gives you 1,000 biographies. And you're telling us that in 3 days the village chief had the opportunity to read 1,000 biographies from these people and to decide which of them should be evacuated. Is that your testimony, Mr. Witness?
In one day, not all of them could be relocated to other villages, so each time 10 or 20 families would be taken out, and it was a continuous process during this period of time.
il m'a semblé.
I don't know if I understood what I was hearing, but it did seem to me that you made two statements about the biographies that were mutually contradictory. I'm just looking at what you answered my learned colleague, and Counsel Koppe asked you, did anybody tell you how the biographies were checked? And you answered, as I heard it in my headphones, I was told to check the information in the biography itself. It was the only way to check. If somebody said he was a peasant, he was put in the peasants group. End of quote. And then a bit later on, you said, I was never asked to check the biographies because I had other jobs to do. So, sir, could you kindly clarify, did you or did you not work on the contents of these 1,000 or so biographies that were written by the people who came to the village? Did you sift through these biographies one way or another? Did you do the checks?
No, I did not, because I did not have anything to do with that. It was the task of the cadres, and we, the militia, had a separate kind of tasks. I personally never reviewed any of those biographies.
Vous venez de dire.
So you have just told us that this was the job of the cadres, but answering my learned colleague's question just now, you said only the village chief checked the contents of the biographies. Are you changing your testimony now? Was the village chief the only one to work on the biographies, or did other people go through them as well? What is your testimony precisely on this subject?
Allow me to clarify it. For the examination of the biographies, there was a group of the village chief, cadres at the village, commune and district level. They all together examined the biographies. It was not the village chief alone who did the task. It was a group who actually reviewed the biographies.
Est-ce que
How many pages long was a biography?
No, I did not know how many pages each biography contained.
comment est-ce
How did the village chief and the other cadres working with him managed to evaluate, investigate and check the contents of the biographies of 70 families who were evacuated from your village in the space of 3 days? Getting the biographies drafted, rereading them, checking them. Do you know the answer to this?
President and witness, please await the prosecution. You may proceed.
Mr. President, given the witness's testimony that he was not involved in this, Mr. Birkin is asking him to speculate when he asks him to provide a statement about how the village and the cadres who did this, how they were able to do it. He's asking the witness to speculate.
President, the objection and its ground is valid, thus sustained. Witness, you are instructed not to respond to the last question put to you by the International Council for Kiel Sampon.
Il y a quelques
A few minutes ago, I asked you how much time went by between the arrival of the families in your village and the time when you were told to accompany a group of them away, and you said 3 days. About 2.5 hours ago, answering a colleague from my learned colleague council, Kope, you were asked how long did the 300 families stay under the house in your village. You answered during a week, and then some of them disappeared and others stayed. Mr. Witness, is your testimony that the first people were transferred to another village in 3 days' time or in a week's time?
I already stated that it was 3 days after.
Pour terminer,
Just in closing, I'd like you to enlighten me on an expression that I might mispronounce. Svaitram. And you said that these were the village militia. But at the same time, you seem to be telling us that the 300 families who were living in your village had come from 2 cities, Kampong Chnang and Phnom Penh. Can you please explain this apparent contradiction in your testimony?
I already stated that Svaitran referred to those people who guarded the village. Soldiers would go to the battlefield. So that is the distinction between the 2 groups. Svaitran would always remain to protect the village. And in the current similar term, it refers to the village or commune militia.
et à cette époque, il y avait des Svaitran.
And in those days, were there Svaitran in the towns?
I did not know whether there were Svaitran in the cities or in the village because the country was divided into separate sectors.
Enfin, pour terminer.
And finally, my colleague Victor Koppe asked you if after having left the 20 or so people who you took from the village, you saw any clues or any indicators of crimes that might have happened, smells or bulldozer tracks or something like that, and you said, I don't know. And then you said, I didn't see any pre-prepared pits. But The question my colleague was asking you about was what you saw before, but also what you saw after you had left. Did you hear the noise of bulldozers or notice any particular odours or see any particular indicators of crimes that might have been committed?
I did not witness it, because by the time I reached that location, there were soldiers who had been there to receive them. Of course, I did not go and have a look at the pits and whether they smelled or not.
Et après?
And after that, in subsequent weeks or months?
Later on, I did not stay in that area or went to that location.
J'en ai terminé.
That is all. Thank you, Mr. President.
President, thank you, Council. And Mr. Leveland, the hearing of your testimony has now concluded, and you may be excused from the court. And we are grateful for your time to testify before this court for one full day with patience and best effort. Your testimony may contribute to finding the truth, and the Chamber wishes you all the very best. The hearing today has come to an adjournment, and we will adjourn now and resume tomorrow morning, that is Wednesday the 3rd of July 2013, commencing from 9 a.m. For tomorrow's proceeding, we will hear the testimony of a witness, TCW 689. This information is for the parties, the support staff, and the general public. President, I'd like to make a small change. The witness is actually TCW 169, as it is incorrectly reported by the greffier. So it is TCW 169. Court officer, in collaboration with Visu, please make an arrangement for the witness to return to his residence or wherever he wishes to go to. Also, make the same arrangement for the reserved witness and have him return to the courtroom tomorrow before 9 a.m. Security guards are instructed to take the two accused, that is Nguyen Chi and Khieu Sampon, to the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. As for Nguyen Chi, bring him to the holding cell downstairs, which is equipped with audio-visual means for him to remotely follow the proceeding. The court is now adjourned.